record. Okay, that's the thing. Yeah. So I want to record. Okay. So hopefully this will create a recording of what happens on the screen. Okay. And what I'm saying, it'll record what's happening on the screen and what I'm saying. Okay. There's no. Let's see. Oh, I forgot to update the. There's no update for today here. I forgot that. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep playing with this example of mouse with a button. Okay. I solved a couple problems with it in the last couple of days, show you what's going, and then want to add more to it. Just keep adding more about event handling. Just get more practice in event handling. So. Remember the weird ghost button that was showing up?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's showing up in like the top left, right?
Right. Here's what. Okay. If you play around, and then was it reset, and then let's see how to. It's not coming to. Okay. Now, what was making it show up? It's not show. Oh, was it when we had two buttons in there? Did it?
No, there was just one. That it usually showed up when you pressed the button.
What was it?
It showed up when you pressed the button, but
Yeah, I thought I just did that. Let's see. Let's see.
Looks like it's refreshing every time, and that's why the.
Okay, and we're not getting the trail right now. I remember what state we were in the other day. Okay, reset. The word reset button works. We're losing the trails.
That's weird. The trail kind of shows up like if you look
Oh,
at
wait a
it
minute.
now.
Oh, I think because I partly fixed the problem. Yeah. Here, okay, let me show you what I changed in the code. Right. That's because I partially fixed the problem. Okay. Okay. Go to the circle panel. Here's a rule that I forgot. The circle panel is supposed to ask its parent to paint itself, which clears the screen. So to get back to where we were the other day, here's what comment this out. Now we're back to where we were the other day. Okay, now watch what happens. Now, see, we're back to where we were yesterday. Okay, now hit the reset button. There's the ghost reset. Yeah, but there's the ghost button up there. Okay, now see the ghost button went away. Now he appears there. The reason is because I'm not following the rules. The rule is the first thing that paint component is supposed to do is call super paint component, which calls its parent class paint component. The parent class paint component is responsible for clearing the screen. That gets rid of any garbage that's showing up. Because what it is they don't guarantee that they don't screw things up. So what you're supposed to do is they do something. Well, before you do anything, you're supposed to call the parent paint component, which clears the panel, and then you're supposed to paint on it. Now, the trouble is, if we do that, we lose our trail. Because then what's going to happen is every time paint's called, it's going to clear the thing for us, which will get rid of that reset button up there. There's a bug there, but also get rid of our trail. So we have to then put the trail back somehow. So what I want to show you today is how we can put the trail back. Now, why don't we have, why are we losing the trail when we erase things? Why is it that we lose the trail if we clear the screen? Well, we can't redraw because what did we actually not do before? We didn't. What else?
You're technically not drawing a trail. You're just drawing a circle.
Right, because I'm not keeping track of. I'm not keeping track of the history of the positions. Okay, so what I need is a data structure that's going to keep track of the history of the positions. So that when I redraw, I can go through the whole list of the history and redraw them all over again. So what I need to do is I need to not just draw one dot. I was getting the trail for free because the screen wasn't being refreshed. So every time I erased the dot and redrew it in the next spot, I got the trail for free. But what I need to do now is remember all the positions of the dot. Then when it's time to after the screens, when it's time to repaint, paint all the dots, the white dots, and then paint one red dot at the end. So I need the history of dots. Okay, so let's go and try to add that. So now we fixed one thing and broke another thing. By doing things the right way, okay, there's the right way. That'll fix one thing and break another thing. It's going to fix the ghost button, but it's going to break our free history. So now we don't have the free history anymore. Yeah, we lost the trail, we lost the free history, but we don't have that we don't have that fake button showing up. Okay. Now notice I'll even lose see, as soon as I hit anything, I lose even that one spot. Okay, like now if I reset it, even that one I'm going to lose as soon as I cause the screen to be redrawn. Okay. One nice thing. Oh, okay. Okay. No. If we go back to the bad way of doing it, if we go back to the wrong way, there was another thing that was kind of flaky about this that we should have. Remember, we noticed that we get this free history, but it can disappear on us by weird things, just like doing that. See, we lost the history.
All of it that time.
Pardon me?
I said all of it that time, even though you didn't.
Yeah, and we don't. Yeah, it's just kind of weird. Sometimes I lose a little bit of it. Sometimes, but then if I do this, sometimes it would come back. Remember, sometimes it would come back. But okay, the fact because if you break through, it's just like a lot of programming languages. Things are guaranteed to work right if you follow the rules. If you break a rule, all bets are off. Anything can happen. Okay, so that's true in every programming language. As soon as you break a rule, they're not responsible for the wacky, weird things that start happening as soon as you break a rule. Okay, and the rule that when I was writing this real quick, I was writing in class, I forgot to call super.paint, which is weird. If that's a rule, it has to be there all the time. What would you expect them to do? Why don't they do it automatically? If it needs to be there all the time, why don't they, when you just compile this code, just generate that call automatically for you? If something has to be there, it just begs for problems for if you have to remember to put it there. I think there are certain weird situations where you don't want to call super.paint, and then you want to take all the responsibility of what super.paint does. So I think the reason they don't automatically call it for you is because in a very small number of cases, and they actually tell you don't do this, but they say that if you're in one of these weird cases where you need to not call that function and do its responsibilities, you don't call that function. So what they're doing is they're making it dangerous for 99.99% of the programmers to satisfy a requirement of 0.001% of the programmers. That's questionable design. That if you 99.9% of programmers need that there. A tiny number of programmers don't want it there, but it's going to cause bugs in a lot of people's code because they forget to put it there. Okay, so now put it there. Now we lose that free history. Okay, so now let's go talk about adding history. Okay, so where would history go? We got all these classes. Okay, there's my classes. Where does the history go? State. It's information. State goes in the state class. You could start being sloppy. You could say, I'll put the state, you could start putting state all over the place. And that's one of the things that makes this coding real messy. In the other folders, I actually showed how you can move this stuff around. If you really wanted to, the state could be in the circle panel. Remember, the circle panel needs access to the state. So put the state in the circle panel, works. You could put the state in the button action listener because it needs access to the state. In the worst case, if you're a real dummy, you put a piece of state in this class, a piece of state in this class, and a piece of state in this class. And I've seen people do this. I've actually seen people do this. They actually start putting, see, the state can go in any one of the classes because every one of the classes needs access to the state. People who aren't smart will then start not paying attention to what they're doing. They'll think, oh, I need this variable. And they just put it in one of the classes. And then they think later on, oh, I need this other variable. And whatever class they have open, they put the variable in that class. And then they give other classes access to it. But then after about a day of this, they've got state scattered over all of their classes. Okay, that's a bad way to do things. What's better is to create a state class and then just say, okay, all the state goes in here. Anybody who needs access to it is given a reference to it through their constructor, but all the state goes here. So that, you know, it's called, that's referred to as disciplined programming or principled programming. You don't have to do it that way. You know, you can make it work by putting the state anywhere you want. It's semi-disciplined to put the state all in one place. So a lot of people will put the state in this guy, the program, especially textbooks. If you look at the examples in GUI of this stuff in textbooks, they usually pile all the state into that class, the class that's the program. That's semi-disciplined. At least they put all the state in one place. But then that class is doing double duty. There's an old saying that every class should have one responsibility. That's what I'm trying to do here. Every class has one responsibility. If you put the state all in one of those, then you've given it two responsibilities. Okay, now, that's semi-disciplined. At least that, all your states in the same place. If someone's reading your code, they'll say, okay, and this is not such an unreasonable place to put the state. But I think that's a little less disciplined than having a state object. Now, as the program grows, and you have thousands of state variables in a large program, you really need to be very disciplined about the state. If you have a couple dozen pieces of state, it may not be so bad to put it all in the program. But then you start blurring what's a local variable with what state is. See, that's the other thing. If you put all the state in here, you're blurring what is essentially local variables with state variables. And it becomes hard for people to tell what belongs to just that file, but what belongs to the whole program. By putting separate state class, I'm saying that's the state that needs to be shared by all the classes. Anything else belongs to an individual class. If one of the classes needs a local variable, that's a local variable. Because if it's a variable, if it's a state that's shared by other people, it's going to be in there. Okay, so let's go in there and let's add some history. Okay, now, it turns out, okay, here's what okay, put this down here. We want to keep track of the history of where the circle's been. So we want to keep track of the history of the old locations. So the old locations are going to move into a list. A list of what? A list of XY coordinates. I could create an array. What's wrong with that? Two, okay, I could create two arrays. What's wrong with that? I can have an X array and a Y array. Start thinking data structures wise. It'll work until
You will get out of memory.
no, I'm not going to. I'd have to click a billion times to run out of memory. I'm not going to click a billion. But think, you're on the right track.
It has a limited memory.
Yeah.
You have to define the size.
Yeah. Okay. Is the array 100? I can only click 100 times. Is the array 1,000? I can only click 1,000 times. Okay. How big should the array be? Oh, well, okay. I don't know how big the array should be. So I have to have code to do what? Data structures course. If I make the array 100 and it fills up, what do I need to do?
You need to make one that's bigger than.
Yeah, I don't want to do all that. So I'm going to use the built-in list data structure because that does that stuff for me automatically. So I don't want to use an array because then I have to maintain it. Or I can make the array a size 1,000,000 and just hope that nobody clicks 1,000,001 times. Okay, so but that's the whole point. The library's got these data structures built for us. So I'm going to use a list. Okay, a list of what though? So now I'm going to import Java. So I'll import java.util.list. So I'm going to import the list class. Okay, so then down here, these guys are going to be replaced by a list. So I'm going to replace the old locations with a list. But here, list of what? Okay. I'm going to call the list trail. List of what?
Point.
Do I have a point? See, yeah, that's what I want. I want a list of point. But do I have a point? I didn't write a point class. And it turns out that luckily Java does give us a point class. So if we go over here, Java 16 point, turns out that in the GUI graphics library, they conveniently gave us a point class that stores an X and a Y, int X and XY. So that's nice. So now I need to import that. So I'll need to import Java. It's in the Java swing class, so it's Java X.swing, the swing package dot point. Okay, Java X swing point. Make sure I got that right. It's in the Java.awt package. No, that's its parent class. This is, yeah, points in Java.awt. I made that mistake too. I saw point2d and it turns out point2d you can't use it because it's an abstract class. So it won't even work. If you try to use point2d, it won't work. It's abstract. So you have to use the point class. Why is there a point2d and a point class? I don't know. But for some reason, they defined an abstract point2d class and a concrete point class. Okay. So yeah, I thought, oh, I'll just use that. And then it didn't compile, and I thought, I saw it. Okay, I have to use this guy down here. Okay. So now we import point, and we can make this a list of point. Okay. But we have to actually create, now that only creates a reference to it, doesn't create the list itself. So I need a new list, but list is abstract. So I need a new array list. There is no list class. There is no, list is abstract. So this should be array list of points, but by the inference, because of the modern, I'm using modern Java here, I don't have to repeat point. It'll fill in that with that. So that's called type inference. Now array list has to be imported too. It also has to be spelled right. Okay, so I have to import that one too. Okay, now, pardon? Where? Oh. Now compile. Oh, okay. What's this? Oh. Oh, it was the abstract ones in swing. And the concrete ones in the AWT. Yeah, go over here. Yeah, I mean, it's their library. They get to do whatever they want. No. Oh no, the abstract one is in awt.geom.point2. And the concrete one is in AWT. Yeah, so neither of them are in swing. Yeah, so neither of them is in swing. It's in AWT. Okay. Oh, and then Java swing. AWT is in Java, not Java X. Okay. Okay, so now we've got a list of points. Okay, and now we have to think about where we're going to use that. Okay, so let's just go through here. Okay. Here we were storing where the mouse was, so now we want to push that into the list. Any place where we were storing something in OL, which is gone now, that's where we should push things into the list. So this will be cs.trail.add new point. And the new point will be cs.xnew cs.ynew. Okay,
Isn't that the reset button?
pardon me?
Isn't that the reset button?
I didn't even look to see what it was. That's the button action listener. Yeah. That's the let's see, okay. Yeah, well, the reset button, see, the reset button, the circle's up here. And he has to go down here.
We're not
So-
resetting the trail. We have to.
We have to add to the trail that he used to be up here. So where he used to be, that should be a white dot. The trail is where we paint the white dots. So he was up here as a red dot. You click the reset button. That red dot's supposed to turn into a white dot. So that red dot should be added to the trail. And then he's going to be moved to the center of the screen. That'll paint a red dot in the center. So where he was becomes one of the white dots. It's like the end of the trail now. It's the last thing in the trail. It's the white dot at the end. It's a white dot at the end of the trail. Okay. If we didn't put him in the trail, the red dot would stay up there. It would stay a red dot up there and it'd be a red dot down here. That red dot needs to be erased up there by putting it at the end of the trail. So the red, where he was, is put at the end of the trail. So then I can get rid of these two. Compile. Oh, 5 errors now.
We have to import the class.
Oh, yeah, this guy doesn't know about point. So we have to tell him about point also, because we're using point in him now. What else? Oh, when I try to compile him, he tries to compile this. So we have to start going do other things now. So I can't compile these guys in isolation. Sometimes you can compile things in isolation, sometimes you can't. So now we have to go fix paint component. Okay, now this one has to change quite a bit because this one's supposed to paint. So instead of just painting, okay, here's where he paints the new one. Here's where he paints now this needs to be replaced by paint the trail. So this is going to be paint the trail. So this guy is going to go inside of a for loop, and it's going to be for point p in cs.trail. For every point in the trail, I want to, okay, now this would be what? The paint dot, yeah, now the x is, this is p dot x, p dot y, the x and y coordinates come out of the p, okay? And this is erase every old disk. Actually, in a sense, it's maybe erase is not the right word to. Now it's redraw every old disk. So essentially redraw every old disk. Okay. Okay, is that right? Compile. Now this guy needs point imported into him also. But we imported everything from AWT. Oh no, I did. Here I was importing. See, here I was doing the style of, which is better style? Import everything or import just what you need? If you import everything, you don't have to keep doing this adding. But at the same time, you might lose track of exactly what you're using. Here I'm using the style of specifying exactly what I'm importing. And I kind of prefer this style. I actually kind of think it's the better thing to do. Kind of keep yourself and keep track of what you're importing. Just keep track of what you're using. Okay, so now I know I'm using 4. I can see right away I'm using 4 classes from the AWT class. Let's see now. What else do I need? oh, okay, now, every time I see something old, that's something that needs to be added to the trail. So now I put this red dot there, and it's red, but it's actually represents the last place where he was. So it's the end of the trail. So now now I'm gonna add cs.trail dot add cs new and I need to make that a new point first. Add new point. Make a new point out of that. Okay.
Is that the wrong place to put that? 'Cause now you're adding it every time you redraw.
But that's the whole point. We're building up the trail. We're building up the history. And we have, remember, every time the screen is blanked, we have to redraw every place we've ever been before.
But in case if the screen is not blank and we are just continuing, will it again redraw everything or it just continues?
I'm not sure what you mean.
I mean, we are not clearing the screen, we're just moving the cursor.
Well, no. When paint components call, I'm assuming that, remember, he called super.
Every time it clears.
Yeah, I know that the screen's been, yeah, that's the mistake we made before. The right way to think is if you're calling paint component, you've got a blank screen. Because you're supposed to call super.paint, blanks the screen. It's up to you to redraw everything. Okay, so we have to redraw all the history of where we've been. We have to redraw all the history of where we've been. Now, at this, here we're saying that that point is at the end of the history list. Now, it's actually a red dot. Right now, it's a red dot. Okay, and I think this is the right place, but you're right, it's not a white dot, it's a red dot, but it's in the history list. So that does seem like it's kind of weird. And, you know, and that's a good question. Yeah, because the history list is supposed to be the dots that were painted white. This guy is been painted red, but remember we did store him as an old position, and so I'm pretty sure it's correct to now take everything that was in x.old and y.old and add them to the history list. So I'm pretty sure this is the right thing to do. Okay.
No errors.
Not compiling yet so far. All right, now let's see. Button action we've done. Okay, what about the key clicks? When somebody clicks the keys. Well, all that does is update the new location. Okay.
It repainted though, so it still adds to the list.
No, it's a new position. It hasn't been painted yet. So it'll get added to the list when we just see. See, then that'll call us repaint. It'll get painted red, then added to the list. So it'll get painted red, and then after it's been painted red, it'll get added to the list. So we don't make any changes here. Make sure it still compiles, okay? Okay. Now, the mouse press is supposed to press the mouse and drag. Okay, which one? Yeah, this is mouse press. Sorry, no, the mouse press is just supposed to figure out, are you inside or are you outside? Okay.
You would have to change like 8 letters.
Yeah, and actually, this was a misprint. This should have been X new and X, and it turned out that X, in this case, they were the same thing. Okay, so I'm going to change now. X old doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to change this to X new.
It's supposed to be Y
Y new, yeah. I'm going to change this one to Y new because that's where the dot, that's where the red dot is. That was actually a misprint that turned out not to be a bug. Okay, coordinate of the red dot is X new, Y new. Okay, so here's the coordinates of the mouse click. Here's the coordinates of the okay, so this should be okay. It compiles. I don't need to check the history list. The idea is the history list is where all the white dots should be. The X new, Y new is where the red dot is. So and it was actually a misprint before, but it actually worked. It was a misprint before that said X new, X old, Y old. Okay, so that's the circle mouse listener. Now I need mouse drag. Okay. Here's here's where we were storing where this is the thing that we didn't need. When the mouse is dragged, you click on the mouse.
You need to record positions.
Well, let's see. Oh, we should add X new, Y new to the history list. Yeah. We add X new, Y new to the history list, and then we record in X new, Y new where the mouse is. So this is where we now, this is another one of those things where we add it to the history list. So this will be cs.trail add new point cs old.
New.
Well, cs new. This code looks okay to you? It isn't. That's not formatted properly. That's not formatted properly. If I email it to you, it probably won't look right. It looks okay, but it's not formatted correctly. Here's something, some of you have already, you guys are making this mistake sometimes when you send code to me. TextPad is a fantastic tool. It's way better than people realize. See this button here shows me what's really there. Yeah, but what's that guy?
For the tab.
Tab. That means if you have tabs set to 8 spaces, that line's going to be indented wrong. If I have tabs set to 3 spaces, it looks okay. If you have tabs set to 4 spaces, it looks wrong. Watch what happens when I save my file. Now, right now, my file's a mixture of tabs and spaces. That'll get you, that's what gets you hated by your colleagues. There's all kinds of internet websites where people write about this. There's a religious war about tabs versus spaces. So there's the tabs versus spaces war that goes on between programmers.
Just pick one and stick with it.
Pick one, right, but make sure you don't accidentally mix them up. And the weird part is, it's easy to get them goofed up. Tab, 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 think a little while, space, 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 type. Hit enter. Tab, 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 think a little while, space, 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 type some more code. Yeah, it's real easy to get them mixed up. And now if I go back to TextPad, when I save my code, I'm not at home. Here's what I'm going to do. Document classes, Java, tabulation, convert tabs to spaces. And I like, I actually like 3. Okay. Now, when I save this, that tab turned into a space. So if I goof up, tab, 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 space, 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 tab, 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 space, 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 save, it'll save it the right way. Good tools help you. Good tools help you. Yeah. Now, Visual Studio Code probably has this buried somewhere in it. Okay. Probably has it buried somewhere in it. What I like about TextPad, it doesn't do as much as Visual Studio Code. To me, that's a blessing. Because what happens with Visual Studio Code is it does a gazillion things. That means 90% of them is buried, hidden under lots of layers of menus. Last night, I was trying to get Visual Studio Code to work with Git, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't get my copy of Visual Studio Code to work with Git, and I was getting really frustrated. TextPad does less, so it can expose to you almost everything it does, and it does what's important. So you can just right here. They thought it's so important for you to see this, they put it right there, because they're right. Just real quick, where are my spaces? Where are my tabs? Where are my new lines? They want you to. They know from experience that you want to know, for example, when there's like this. Okay, I mean, it might really matter to me to know that there's a whole bunch of extra spaces. Where? Oh, that's another thing. I don't like, this is called trailing spaces. TextPad removes them for you, but you can configure that. So you go over here. Strip trailing spaces. Okay, most programmers want trailing spaces stripped out of their files because they can cause they can get in the way of things. So by default, TextPad will strip trailing spaces for you. And on your hand, this tool up here will let you know if you have them. So if my file has trailing spaces, I see them right away. You know, I wouldn't know they're there unless I click on this little button here. Okay. TextPad TextPad was really well designed. It doesn't do anything anywhere close to as many things as Visual Studio Code does, but it surfaces to you everything that's most important. And that's one of the things I like about it, is the way it makes the things that are obvious, makes the things that you use every day really, really obvious. Okay. On your hand, if you learn Visual Studio Code, you just remember, how do I look for visual spaces? How do I change the tabulation? If you remember that kind of stuff, fine. You know, because you do get the benefit from Visual Studio Code of all the other things it does. But as soon as you want to do something you haven't done in 6 months, you can spend an hour trying to figure out how to do it. It's a matter of like, are you doing this stuff every day and you remember? Anyway, so make sure before you submit a file, or if you're going to upload a file that you're going to check something into GitHub, unless you have your computer set to always save everything in either tabs or spaces, one or the other, check. Either configure your editor to all. The world is the tabs versus spaces war is being won by the spaces people. Except the glaring example is the Linux kernel. The Linux kernel will stay in the world of tabs forever. The Linux kernel is written in tabs. But for the most part, I think the majority, it's not a huge majority, but the majority of people prefer spaces right now. Tabs and space, it's so much easier to convert all the tabs to spaces than have all spaces. It's hard to convert the spaces to tabs. Converting spaces to tabs ends up being goofy. And then you end up with files, you send it to your boss, and he writes back, format your code before you send it to me. And you go, but it was formatted. And he has his tabs set differently than you, and your code looks awful on his terminal. If you do it all spaces, your boss isn't going to write you, format your code before you send it to me, because it's all spaces. It's safer. It's just, he's not going to open nobody's going to open your file and see garbage. But if you're using tabs, unless you use them religiously and you're really careful to use tabs everywhere, your files will look terrible when they're opened by somebody who has the tabs set differently than you. If you have it set to 4 and they have it set to 3, they'll look differently in there. Okay, now let's see. Okay, this one, did it compile? No. I need to add point in here. Now let's see, let's put that may be in all of them. There's our trail. And that trail will live forever until we do something about it. Okay, so reset brings me back to the center. So and notice now I can minimize, I can maximize. Notice it, even when it's hidden, you can even see there's the trail. It shows up in there. It's being it's refreshing properly and everything. If I go here, it's not going to disappear on me. Now, what's happening is every time I do that stuff, repaint's being called, and I'm repainting the history. So I'm constantly repainting it. Okay, but now program's way better now. I don't have those weird ghosts or anything, and now the trail lives forever. Now let's add another button. Let's add a button that does. Now this I'm making reset do two things. Reset one's going to put them in the center. Reset two is going to clear the screen. So you can do them separately. So let's add another button and do reset two. Okay. Now, have another, okay, the button's already there. So there's the other button. So I don't have, okay. And to put, and there's button added to the, okay, so the code, but now I need a listener for the other button. The interesting thing is the other button needs a different listener. So now button 2 is going to need its own listener. So I'll say button 2, because it doesn't do the same thing button 1 does. And what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to change the name of this to Action Listener 1 and create the new one, Action Listener 2. So I'm going to go refactor my code a little bit. I'm going to go back to button Action Listener. And I'm going to rename him button Action Listener 1. Now this is where Visual Studio Code and Eclipse are way better. They'll refactor for you in a much more elegant way. I have to refactor by being really careful. TextPad is not smart when it comes to refactoring. So if I change the name of a class, I got to make sure I change it everywhere it needs to be changed. With Eclipse and programs like that, you like here, see, I have to go through and I have to make sure I change it in the right places. Eclipse has a feature where you can just say, change the name of this class. And it'll change the name of the class everywhere in your project the right way. That's powerful. Yeah. And if you're working on a project with 50 files and 10,000 lines of code, you want that feature. But TextPad is really great when you're working on 4 or 5 files like this. Okay, so I can handle this kind of refactoring. But that's what Eclipse, Visual Studio Code, and all those are actually Visual Studio Code doesn't do that. Visual Studio Code, that's what it doesn't do that Eclipse and Visual Studio and JetBrains, what is it JetBrains? Yeah, the really heavy duty ones, that's their main selling point, refactoring. You say, change the name of this class, and everywhere in your project, it changes. Yeah, Visual Studio Code, I'm pretty sure can't do that.
I'm not sure if you can change the name of the class, but there's like, you could change a certain thing that you could go Control F, like the place thing that you normally.
Oh, but see.
But that changes it in one class.
But that changes them, that just does string matching.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. Don't ever use that. Because that doesn't pay attention to changing the class names. That changes everything that has that same name. So it's really easy to come up with an example, like a good example. Where that's dangerous is suppose you have a local variable called Bob. Here's the difference between suppose you have a local variable called Bob, and it's in a block. And in another block, you have a local variable called Bob. And you say Control F Bob, change it to Jane. But you really only wanted to change it in this block. They'll change it in both. They'll change every Bob to a Jane. But you want to change this Bob to a Jane, which means it should stay within those braces. As far as I know, Visual Studio Code doesn't know how to do that. What do you need to be able to do that? Some of you are in the compiler class. The answer's got to do with the compiler class. What does Visual Studio Code not have that Eclipse has? The parse tree. Visual Studio maintains a parse tree. So when you say change this Bob, it knows it's within one branch of the parse tree, and it changes the Bobs in that branch of the parse tree. And it won't change that Bob because it knows that Bob's outside of the parse tree, outside of that branch of the parse tree. It maintains a parse tree. Those IDEs are basically the front ends of compilers. they have a full tokenizer, parser, and syntax analyzer built into the IDE. So half of the compiler is built into the IDE. In fact, Visual Studio, I'm sorry, Eclipse finishes it. Eclipse has a full Java compiler built into the IDE. That's why as you're making changes, it can compile as you're going along. There's actually a compiler built into the code of the IDE, which is an extreme thing, but that's what they did. Then they can do, the refactoring is not Control F, the refactoring is change Bob in this scope, as opposed to not the Bob in this other scope. Control F, this guy can do Control F. This guy can do Control F. Oh, he doesn't do Control F. For some reason, TextPad doesn't use the normal key binding, so it doesn't use Control F. For searching, it does F8. Yeah, so F8. There, see, find and replace. Yeah, it's not Control F, it's F8. But yeah, so but it's dumb. It just finds the string Bob everywhere and replaces it. And it could accidentally replace ones you don't want. You have to pay attention as it's stepping through the code. You got to make sure that you replace the Bobs up here. When you get to this, you stop replacing. You have to do it yourself. You have to maintain the logic yourself. Okay. Now, okay, so I got button actioner 1. I think let's see. Is this guy? Okay, he's okay. I'm just going to steal him for now. And I'm going to make this button action listener 2, and then think about what I need to change in it. So, very dangerous style of coding. Copy and paste. Okay. It's quick and dangerous. Okay. So now I got to make sure that I update this guy properly. Okay. Now, let's see. We want this button to erase the history. So what should it do?
Clear the list.
But it doesn't own the list. Let's think about it. The state owns the list. Now let's see. Maybe that is okay. We've been adding to the list. So it would be. Yeah, I think it would be. Yeah, I think it would be okay. We can have him just empty the list, clear the list. He doesn't. But yeah, because we've had everybody else adding things to the list. Now he's going to just delete everything from the list. So the only thing he needs to do then is. Oh, does he need to call repaint? Yeah, he's clearing it, so he should recap. So he's going to trail. He's going to take the trail, and now, is there a clearing of the list? Well, let's go to the Java. Look up the list class. How do you empty a list? And there is a clear. Yeah, clear removes all the elements from the list. Some people call it empty, some people call it clear, some people, yeah. So you have to make sure which library you're using, you have to choose the right name. So clear, in fact, they may even have more than one name for it. Sometimes they know people, sometimes they give you more than one name for the same function, just because they know that people, if they're coming from some other library, they might be using a different name. Okay, so this would just be clear. Okay, maybe that's it. Okay.
But the point should be there, right? 1 point in the center. No?
Because that's XY new. Yeah. See, yeah, that's a good point. See, we've got the red dot in a separate field in the state. So the trail is all of the former white dots, but that red dot is still there. So the red dot shouldn't go away on us. Move things around. I can drag him. I can move him some more. I can send him back to the center. Drag him some more. Okay, now this reset button, see, leaves him where he is, but erases the trail. And then the other reset button puts him back in the center if I want to. Okay, all right. And okay, so now we got. So we got 2 buttons. Oh, remember, now these buttons are in a flow layout manager. So for example, see how they're at the bottom now? Yeah. And see if I widen it, they float like here. One of them will be at the bottom and one's on the right. There, see now one's because they're in a flow, they're flowing like text. This is sloppy, you know, this is, I'm using a simple layout manager right now. So these guys just flow and that's okay for now. But if you wanted to fix this up, you'd use a better layout manager and make this, okay. Now let's keep that, let's see. Here's my next idea. I want to just keep adding GUI elements to this. Let's add a slider that lets you change the size of the red dot. So that you could have a little slider and you move the slider, the red dot grows and shrinks. And it's kind of cute when you do that. So let's do that. Okay. So what's a slider in Java? Okay, sliders in Java, what you do is you put a J in front of everything. J button, J checkbox, J slider. So let's look up J slider. There is a slider and there's a J slider. Don't use the slider. That's the old GUI library. So we should use the J slider. Okay. Right. So they don't even show you a picture of it here. You know, the documentation is a little bit, you'd think they would at least show you what it looks like. Now, earlier we had there was one web page that showed you what every component kind of looks like. Okay. So a slider is something that goes back and forth. By default, if you just create I'm in the wrong place. I'm in I clicked on the wrong thing. I'm under accessible slider. I want just slider. I trust Google. I always click on the first thing. Yeah, and this was one place for some reason Google, fooled me. So there's slider. Okay. Where's the constructor? Am I missing? Nesting. Field. Oh, here. The default constructor creates a horizontal slider, which is good for us. So we want a horizontal slider. But what we're going to do is, right now we're defaulting to 20 pixels diameter. I think a good range would be like from 5 pixels up to say 100 pixels. So now to make the slider have a range, see here you can control the orientation, but I'm happy with horizontal. Here's the min and the max. And here's what we really want: min, max, and initial value. Let's start at what we're using now, 20. We're using a dot size of 20. So let's create a slider that goes from 5 to 100, but starts off at 20. Okay, so go over to our code, and now, on this file, I did the import everything. Okay, so this one, I did import everything. So now I can just go ahead and final J slider JS equals new J slider. And I looked up the constructor. What would be good is say from 5, smallest 5 up to largest 100, and default initially it'll be set at 20 because that's what we're using. Okay. Then jf.add get content pane add the J slider. Okay. Then now we're going to have to go down here and we have to think about, we're going to have the J slider. It's going to need to add some kind of listener. Okay. And then we're going to need a new, whatever that thing is, new slider something listener. And probably it's going to need the constate and the panel. Okay. Okay. What kind of listener does a slider have? Okay. So we're going to have to add some. Yeah. Mouse. See how we're accumulating a lot of things. A key listener, a mouse listener, a mouse motion listener, an action listener, 2 action listeners, 1 for each button. Now the question is, what listens to a slider? Okay, so we go back to the documentation. and we see that there under methods, that there is an add change listener. Okay, so sliders need change listeners, whatever those are. So over here, I'm going to say add change listener. Now, this is not stuff I know off the top of my head by any means. You know, I looked this up in the document. I have no clue what listener a slider takes. I look it up. Yeah, if I was someone who did Java GUI programming for a living, I probably would know that. But if I'm not someone who does Java GUI programming for a living, I know enough to figure out from the documentation how to look up what listener there is. So I know enough to say I go to the methods and find something that adds some kind of listener. Okay, so I see, oh, it adds a change listener. So I know enough to go look in the documentation to find these things out. So add change listener, and this will be a slider change listener. Now I need to create a file that's a class. Okay, now I'm going to go back and steal my button listeners. I mean, well, yeah, why not? I'll do some copy paste kind of stuff. I'm going to take my button action listener and turn it into a slider change listener, because it has a lot of stuff in common. Okay, it's a slider change listener. It needs these two state things. It's a slider change listener. Okay, and okay, now this is going to be different. What method goes in there? Okay, now I'm going to save it as a slider change listener.java. You know, the method, now I have to go over to the documentation and say, oh, what's a slider change listener? Okay. See, it's an interface. See, all listeners implement an interface. Oh, so back over here, it implements the slider listener interface. See, or it's the change listener interface. So it's implements change listener. Slider change listener implements change listener. What's the method? There's only one method in here, state change. So this is state change. And state change takes a change event parameter. Okay. I don't know. I have no idea if this is the right thing to do yet. I mean, we'll figure out what to do here. But okay, a slider. Okay, a slider is something you grab and you slide back and forth. And you know what you really want to do is you want to say, okay, if I slid it, what tick mark is it on? Because it's got a bunch of tick marks. So a slider is something you click on and you slide it back and forth. And as you're sliding it back and forth, you're going between the minimum maximum number. In our case, the minimum number was 5 and the maximum number was 100. What I want is that number, because I'm going to use, oh, and what am I going to do with that number? Let's switch gears a little. The slider is going to control the diameter of the dot. Where do I store the diameter of the dot? State. So I need. So now let me go to my state variable, my state, and say, okay, I have a new piece of state to keep track of. So I'm going to have a public int diameter.
So where are we saving the initial 20 pixels of the red dot? We're not storing this.
I'll put it in here. I'll put it. Before it was hard coded, right? See, now I'm going to make it the initial value of this variable. Yeah, see, before it was a sloppily hard coded 20 in a bunch of places, which was sloppy, very sloppy. What's that called? When you have hard coded numbers like this in your code, what do we call those? Magic numbers. And first rule, no magic numbers, which I was sloppily ignoring. So I should add a constant diameter. Okay, I should have had a constant diameter that everybody shared. Instead, I had the number 20. But now I'm going to have a field diameter, and it's going to initialize the 20. Okay, so public int diameter equal 20. That's my initial diameter. Okay, all right. So my slider is going to, the value of my slider is going to end up in here. Okay, but how do I get the value of the slider? Okay, so and now, so now I have to think hard about, I have to start asking, how I get this state changed event. How do I use it to figure out what the slider value is? I don't have a clue. When you don't have a clue, what do you start doing? What?
Look at the method.
Oh, even more basic than that.
Google.
Googling, yeah, it's like how to use a slider. Okay, so like let's just say, let's just do swing. Because we're in the swing library, how to use a slider or J slider. Yeah, you could go read the documentation, but probably it's faster to go see somebody do an example. Yeah, the truth is we learn more by examples than by documentation, but we really should use both. But let's just see. Okay, here's the tutorial. Okay, there's what a slider looks like. Okay. This is more complicated than it needs to be. I remember, I know it's
Say they dot get value.
where,
The source of dot get value.
okay. Okay, state change, okay, is that what we're in state changed, right? State changed. Okay. Steal some code from them. And then, where was it? And we want this to be diameter. Actually, what I really want to do is just stick it into CS.diameter. Go ahead and stick it in there. Okay. No, okay, don't want to clear the trail. Let's see, is that a, maybe ask the slider what it's set to and stick that value in the diameter and just go repaint. Does this compile? No, I'm probably forgetting some imports. Yeah, I need to change listener. See, I'm importing all the events here. See, even the dot stars don't save your butt all the time because change listener is not in AWT. Change listener is in swing. Yeah. So so now I need import Java x dot swing dot, what was it? Dot swing events dot change listener. Is that right? Did I spell that right? Now, change event, I'm not sure which one it's in. So let's see if this compiles. No, not yet, probably. See, I need import. So what about change event? Where's change event? Change listener gets a change event. It's under, it's also under swing. Okay, so this is change event. Oh, and now I need import. I need the J slider in here now. Oh, okay, done. Yeah, again, if you prefer, you can just do dot star import everything. Or if you want, you could do it the way I'm doing here, where you just kind of keep adding more and more imports. Okay, let's just see if it works. How much time do we have? Oh, a minute, 2 minutes. Let's see if it works.
All the brackets.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. That's a method call. Okay. That's working. That's still working. That's still working.
haven't updated the main component method.
Oh, wait,
Depend-
Yeah, because you're just sending in hard coded values.
yeah, oh, the panel, right? The panel never went and looked, okay, here. CS dot diameter. Right, that's where the magic numbers were. Now the magic numbers are gonna be replaced by that value. Compile,
Even in 946.
oh, yep, yep. Mhm.
Oh,
Now, what's interesting is, oh, now see, the focus is on the slider right now. Now, if I hit the tab key, the focus is back on the panel. Okay. Now the focus is on the slider, but notice it's kind of cute. Now, here's the next thing to add. We run out of time. I was going to put a checkbox that say, remember the history of the slice or not remember the history. So like now, right now, I want a checkbox. So if you check the checkbox and you grow the dot, it only affects the future movement, not the past movement. But if you want to affect the past movement, then it can have it both affect the future and the past movement. So, the idea was just another GUI component. Add a checkbox where you check. I was doing that in my office before class. I haven't got it to work. But the idea is add a checkbox over here, another GUI component. And when you check that checkbox, then if you slide it, it uses the current value of the slider, and it doesn't change the past ones. But this one's kind of, it works, it's nice both ways. Like here now, you can. I still don't, like right now, the focus is on the slider, right? If I click over here, the focus does not move over there. I still don't know how to solve this problem. To get the focus over here, the only way I know how to do it is to use the tab key. So if I hit the tab key, now the focus is over here. So there's still a weirdness going on with the focusing. Okay, now if I click on the reset button, now the focus is on the reset button. And to get the focus over here, I can't click over here. I have to tab, tab, tab. See, I have to do the cycle. I have to tab from here to here, over to here. So I have to use the tab cycle. Okay,
Even
and,
drag won't work.
pardon?
Dragging will also not work if
No, the mouse doesn't, the mouse won't change the focus. I have to use the tab key to change the focus. So once I click, now the mouse does change the focus because look, the focus is over here now, right? Now the focus is over here. So the mouse changed the focus, but the mouse won't change the focus to him. The mouse will only change the focus to him, him, and him. The tab key will change the focus from him, him, him to him, but the tab key has to cycle. So the tab key has to go boink, 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 whereas the mouse can just go here. See, like the mouse can just go straight to the, skip over reset 2 and go straight to here. Now skip over here and go back to reset. Now skip over here. Okay, now go back to reset. Then skip over to here. Tab key must cycle. The mouse can just click, but the mouse can't click on him. Now this is the guy who caused us trouble before, so there's still a problem here. Focus is messy. Focus is a really messy thing. So the focus is kind of working, but still not quite working. I should be able to just click on this guy here and drag him. See, I can't drag him. Oh no, I can click and drag him, but see, look at where the mouse key, the keyboard is. The key is still on the slider. Even though I'm dragging him, focus is still on the slider. That's weird. Yeah. So even though I clicked on him and dragged him, the focus stayed, the keyboard focus stayed over here. So the keyboard focus and the mouse are out of whack with each other. They're not in sync with each other.
they work the same way, right? When you're seeing the web page, when we click on something and we were typing through keyboard.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
Yeah.
in sync. You click on something, it should have key focus.
Yeah, but with that, with the mouse, we can actually scroll 2 different pages.
But that was not clicking, that was just hovering. That was just, see, like over here,
Yeah.
see, that's scrolling. But I'm not clicking over there. See, if I click over there, now that has key focus. As soon as I click, it's got key focus. So hover focus and key focus are different things. Or this is called scroll focus. This is scroll focus, not key focus. So this guy has the focus of the mouse scroll wheel. The key focus is still over here on this other window. See, notice that the mouse is over here, but the key focus is still over on him. Focus is complicated. Okay, so let's quit here. Okay, now let's see. What do I want to do? Stop sharing. And just end the meeting.